points of agreement with Iran right now.
Many.
What can you give us a
Many, like 15 points. 15 points.
Iran has said yes.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number one. That's number 1, 2, and 3. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
They said yes to that?
They've agreed to that.
A 15-point plan is 15 opportunities for Iran to cheat. To put it another way, giving Iran a 15-point plan is like inviting an alcoholic to a bar with 15 specialty cocktails. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was right 10 months ago when he didn't want to stop the war. Trump was right when he demanded unconditional surrender. George H.W. Bush, we want to go back in the Middle East, screwed this up as well with Iraq War I, but the Iranians are worse than Saddam Hussein. Now the White House is talking about talks, but as we have seen from Trump throughout, there is a strong chance this is just another smokescreen. In a minute, former Brigadier General John Tikkert, former Assistant Deputy Undersecretary of the Air Force, and Doron Kempel, former commander of the IDF's Sarat Makal unit. First, NewsNation's Libby Dean from the White House. Good evening, Libby.
Good evening, Leland. So the Gulf states seem to be staying out of this at this point. Pakistan, they seem to be taking this central role as a mediator between the United States and Iran. Now, I'm told the president spoke with Pakistan's army chief this morning about those negotiations, which the president says are going great, but the Iranians aren't even acknowledging that those are happening. Now, despite that, the president already starting the clock on this deal, as you mentioned, Leland, giving Iran 5 days and saying they've agreed to 15 points. One of those being not building a nuclear weapon, according to the president today, speaking there on the tarmac. Now, while this development of talks is really happening, I mean, you look, Leland, at what the United States is actually doing, and there are still thousands of Marines en route to the region, with reports of 3,000-man brigade of the elite 82nd Airborne could soon be deployed as well. And, of course, as we saw today, military strikes not letting up. The president, of course, saying strikes on those energy targets. They're holding off on those as these negotiations are happening, according to the president, and the president speaking with that Pakistani official today. Leland.
All right, Libby, thank you very much. Brigadier General John Tikkert, Doron Kempel with us. Doron, you have spoken passionately about how you believe that the Israelis have this plan to turn the Iranian regime against itself, so they will fight amongst themselves. That doesn't seem to be happening yet. Why not?
Well, we don't know that it's not happening. What is clear is not the thing that happens with us seeing what's happening. So what is happening is there is a decaying of the regime and the IRGC, while all along preparing the conditions for a friendly general that we do not know to rise and lead the uprising. That requires some time. President Trump just bought us another week, right? Just when all of us said we can't hold it anymore, the Straits of Hormuz, he just got another 5 days, and all of us feel, oh, 5 days, great, we can wait 5 days. So now the forces of the ground have another 5 days to continue decaying the military power of Iran, at the same time preparing for this uprising.
Okay. General Tikkert, 82nd Airborne heading over. You've got 5,000 Marines coming on the USS Tripoli. Whatever special forces were already in the theater we don't know about. Is this setting up for a ground war?
Leland, you would rather have them there and not need them than need them and not have them. But I think it does two things. Number one, it does give the president options, and that could be portions of a ground war. But number two, it's a strong signal to Iran that we still have the ability to escalate. We have tools in our toolkit, and I think that will play into their strategic calculus regardless of how it ultimately plays out on the ground.
Yeah, I think, Doron, you made a very good point. And to be fair to the president, yes, he backed off of bombing the power plants, which would have some significant implications in Iran, but said that if the 5-day period expires, then all bets are off. Take a listen.
We're doing a 5-day period. We'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
Doron, what else needs to be bombed in Iran to set the groundwork, as you've laid out, for this invasion?
So just to remind the audience, there's a minimal aim to the war, and that is decaying the military, all the ballistic missile infrastructure, the nuclear powers, etc., set back Iran, or basically Russia and China, 5 years, but they'll reconstitute. The maximal goal is, of course, to replace the regime. In order to do that, that's not a matter of bombing. This is a matter of eliminating 3 tiers of leadership within the regime and the IRGC. And this is happening as we speak. And at the same time, setting the conditions that we do not see on television for some friendly general. And by the way, we don't know who he is. He might be ready tomorrow.
When you say the conditions, what conditions are necessary for that?
Conditions to secure this friendly general such that he can march, which with his forces across Iran, say that he's now managing Iran, and to help him on the ground win against whatever is left of the IRGC. These are the conditions. And the only ones that know that the conditions are met are Mossad and CIA.
Okay. Let me ask it a different way. President Trump took the easy win 10 months ago with Midnight Hammer, right? One and done. Netanyahu clearly wanted to continue that war. In fact, Trump made him turn planes around. First American president who has been able to tell Bibi what to do. That was sort of remarkable, especially watching it from my seat and having been spending time in the Middle East. The question, though, is this. Would this have been easier to do 10 months ago and continue this, or is it easier to do now?
I don't know enough about what's going on the ground. I know that Bibi was ready at that particular point in time, but look at the forces that the United States has on the ground right now. These forces were not in the Middle East at that point in time. It took months to build all of that. So I would say no. I think that President Trump did the right thing, preparing the forces and managing it correctly as he does right now.
General, this from the New York Times. Israel thought it could spur rebellion inside Iran. That hasn't happened. The belief that Israel and the United States could help instigate widespread revolt was a foundational flaw. Instead of imploding from within, Iran's government has dug in and escalated the conflict, striking blows and counter-blows against military bases, cities and ships around the Persian Gulf, and against vulnerable oil and gas installations. Is there a panic approach to the realities of war that Iran, yes, has hit some things. Yes, we probably underestimated their drones, but we're doing pretty well?
That report massively overstates how well Iran is doing. They are not doing well at all. And I actually think the president hit on something that was powerful this weekend in the threatening their power plants. Because in war, you threaten to impose the greatest cost possible on the things that your adversary values most while incurring the minimal amount of risk. We've been doing a pretty good job of that in the last 3.5 weeks. But I think the power plants or the energy infrastructure is actually the thing that Iran fears most. And I like that the president started to go down that path, and I hope he continues.
Doron, you know the Middle East better than I do. You fought there and lived there. At what point do the Iranians think that simply surviving another day is success and therefore are working with a different calculus than President Trump is?
The leaders that we need to displace are not going to view that as a sufficient goal. They need to survive, and that's their only aim. And they would do that at the price of killing their people and ruining all of their reputations with anybody else in the Middle East. They're just about survival. I'm talking about the leaders of the regime.
Okay, so the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and others, do they really care, though, about the maximalist price? Do they care if the power plants are bombed to the extent that people who believe they're going to get whatever reward in heaven that they believe they're going to get don't view death as a bad alternative?
Just to clarify, I was referring to the top leaders of the regime. Below that, the layers of leadership below, they would like to survive. So once they understand that the game is over, they're just going to align themselves with whoever manages the country. I was talking only about the top people around the regime, not the IRGC leadership below level 1.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Great expertise from both General John Tikkert, Doron Kempel. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Back here at home, that big building behind me right there, people who work there, being a congressman, is a job so good that nobody can afford to give it up. For most in Congress, it is the best job they will ever have. A staff, a driver, endless stock tips, and right now, an escort through TSA lines, perhaps the most valuable thing going. 87-year-old, yeah, you see there are some congressmen getting escorts. 87-year-old Congresswoman Maxine Waters knows that. She just announced she's running for re-election at 87. She's eyeing the title of chairwoman of the House Financial Services Committee if Democrats win in November. Not sure I would trust Maxine Waters with my finances, but you can decide that. She would be the oldest committee leader in history. Waters telling Politico, quote, "If you take a look at my energy and what I do, I am anti-Maxine. I am the one who popularized reclaiming my time. I don't know who's got more energy, more concern, and so Maxine Waters seems to be doing all right." Clearly speaking in the third person adds so much gravitas. Congress has become a retirement home. For example, here's a list of the oldest Democratic lawmakers, and Republicans too. Chuck Grassley, 92. Congressman Hal Rogers, 88. Nancy Pelosi, 85. Bernie Sanders, Mitch McConnell, 84. And there are others. The founders missed term limits and age limits because they never imagined an entrenched political class. Ambassador Francis Rooney spent 4 years in Congress and got out. And while there, he proposed a bill that would circumvent the need for a constitutional amendment for term limits. At 12 years in Congress, your pay went to $1. All right, so when you came up with that idea, what happened?
By and large, there were some senior members, including a couple of very high Republican and Democrat leaders that were not very happy with it at all and made their opinions quite clear.
Term limits are universally popular with the American public. Same thing with the ban on congressional stock trading, but it will never happen. The reality is that most members of Congress represent themselves, not us. Just ask Auntie Maxine. We first wrote about this in War Notes, your chance for an inside look at the show every day. It is free at warnotes.com to subscribe. I'll see you on social media at Leland Vittert. The real madness this March is here, the one thing the left and right actually agree on in 2026. See you in a minute.